Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Rewind Project. We're going to be kicking off the 1998 season here. Well, like 1990 season. Our movies of 1998.
1988 arc.
Arc. Yes, there we go. Everything should be an arc now. Everything has to be an arc. It's all about miniseries.
A saga, if you will.
That's right.
This is going to be a good saga this portion of the season, too. I'm really excited about all these movies. Starting off today, we're going to be talking about The Truman Show, though. So this is also the year that Google was founded. Crazy enough, we've been using this for so long. Like, this is after college for me. Like, Google gets started in this September 1998. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who I think is kind of actually hot.
He's a little hot. He's like nerdy hot, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely
hottest
I have no idea what this man looks like.
The hottest correspondent is weighing in.
I'm glad that I'm in good company here because I've always thought that.
I'm Googling him right now. And look,
Googling.
I'm Googling.
You're Googling. It's very meta. We've gotten real meta and not the meta of Facebook. It's crazy. And it's actually funny because as the time of this recording, Google is laying off a shit ton of employees. So it all comes back around.
Yeah, well, they started off with very few. Incorporated Google as a private company in Menlo Park in California. Started out, moving from the dorms, moving into a garage. Which
wasn't Apple also in a garage?
Yeah, they did.
I feel like that has to be part of the origin story, right? They got to have a hard scrabble. They got to start in a dorm room. They got to be in a garage. They got to, that's part of the
superheroes have to watch their parents being killed at an impressionable age. Yes. All tech companies need to start in a garage somewhere.
In a garage with in sweatpants, whatever.
I think all good startups do. The ones that last the longest, all the ones that actually start off with way too much funding, they all fizzle out real quickly because they're not actually ever trying to get anywhere. They were still PhD students at Stanford, had first created the new search engine as a school research project.
It's so fucking bananas. Yeah. I mean, it's worth billions and billions and trillions and gazillions of dollars. And you just started it as a research project.
I think up till then, we had just been all the other search engines were really just people creating lists. And then you were just double checking the lists online is essentially what was going. And what they did here is they created a unique algorithm that calculated a website's relevance to search by analyzing links, back to the site rather than connections to its search terms. So it's kind of bananas how they started looking at stuff, and we've gone from there. And algorithms now rule our lives everywhere we go.
I mean, I could be an algorithm myself. It could be AI right here. Actually, no AI person would draw me. That's what I'll say. No AI person would have my personality. For better or for worse.
And I did not give my profile pictures up to those people to give me back me neither. No way. Sorry to those who did, but I didn't fall for that.
I used to love a scheme like that, but no, this time I was like, that might be a bridge too far for me. Though I digress for 1 minute. I was watching the news the other day where they were talking about AI art, and there's all the whole privacy and who owns it and copyright it. But I have to say, some of the AI art I've seen is actually pretty fucking cool. So
the thing that's scary about that to me is that I think we're 10 years off from Netflix just saying we need a show like this, and then the computer just goes through and creates it all, and we don't need people anymore. It's just going to start putting it all together, and you'll be able to churn out seasons of schlock, and that people are going to be watching.
Thanks. I hate it.
I mean, look, if the whole generation is populated by Megans, I'm okay with that. Go see Megan; it's a lot of fun.
Welcome to the Rewind Project, where Allie, Matt, and Eric take another look at your favorite milestone movies through the lens of our present day. Will it be a skip, rent, or buy? Stay tuned and find out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rewind Project.
We're back.
It's like we never left because we really didn't. But we're back with a brand new season. I am thrilled to be the first show of the new season. And we are talking about today our first movie of 1988, The Truman Show. Let me just let that sink in. I was excited to watch it, and I am excited to talk about it because I think that we have a lot to talk about 25 years later, because things that were just sort of whispers or ideas in 1998 are now full-fledged things that we do every day.
I am really glad that you selected this movie because it was really hard not to choose it and put it on my list. So I'm glad it made it in.
Happy to help. Happy to help. It's like when Eric chose the Birdcage, so I knew I did that.
It was kind of like Matt choosing Elizabeth this year for me.
We know each other pretty well at this point. So this movie was written by Andrew Niccol and directed by Peter Weir. Let me tell you, the notable achievements for this movie, when I was doing my research, and by research I mean when I was on the Wikipedia page, the list of achievements is like pages long. Now, they list every little film award. There's like the Tasmanian Film Award. I'm making that up. Like literally, it was like the Bartley Springs Film Festival winner. There was one about like they won some dubbing awards in the countries where it was dubbed. But let me tell you, the list is exhaustive. So this was a very popular movie and a very popular award-winning movie. But the biggies, for the 1999 Oscars, there were 3 nominations, no wins. Peter Weir for Best Director, Ed Harris for Best Supporting Actor, and Andrew Niccol for Best Original Screenplay. We'll get into it. I do feel that Jim Carrey should have been nominated for an Oscar.
I do too. I think they snubbed him. And I was really mad.
Yeah, when I remembered that, I was like, "Oof, not great."
1999 was a very aggravating year.
It was. We're gonna get Matt hyped up about the Oscars every single movie in this season, in this mini season. I can't wait. And then the 1999 Golden Globes, 6 nominations, 3 wins. It was nominated for Best Motion Picture Drama. Jim Carrey, who won. Ed Harris, who won.
So he won in the drama category.
Yes,
that's interesting. And didn't get nominated for an Oscar.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like double snub because, the Golden Globes are always before the Oscars. So, yeah. Peter Weir was nominated for Best Director. Andrew Niccol was nominated for Best Screenplay. Neither of them won, but Best Original Score did win.
It's a great score. It's a very good score. I listened to this a lot. This was one of the CDs, back when we had CDs that I purchased.
Really?
Yeah, I listened to this score a lot.
That's hilarious. I would have never thought to pick up a
Philip Glass
CD. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, that was just like a tiny little snippet of all of the, it got BAFTAs, it got all sorts of different kinds of awards. The plot, I think I got this log line from IMDb because they have the best log lines. But this one is hilarious because it doesn't really say anything about anything. An insurance salesman, which I would never think of Truman, but he is, but that's not how I would think of him. An insurance salesman discovers his whole life is actually a reality TV show.
That pretty much sums it up. I mean,
like a very specific distillation. I loved it. All right, well, let's get into this like super stacked cast, including lots of people that I had fully forgotten were in it. We're going to kick it off with one and only Mr. Jim Carrey himself as Truman Burbank.
So this was his big kind of I can do more than Ace Ventura and the Mask kind of movie. Now, I like Jim Carrey for the most part in this movie. I remember reading somewhere 25 years ago that he did a lot of improv in this movie, that Peter Weir, was getting really frustrated with him. And eventually Jim Carrey just said, I know you want it to be understated. I know you want it to be real, but every once in a while, can we just do a take that's like my version of what we do? And Peter Weir said, sure, if you want to. And then at the end of the movie, Jim Carrey was really excited that Peter Weir used a lot of his takes.
Mm-hmm. The one in the mirror with the soap was totally improv.
Yeah, that was all improv. But sometimes I was watching this movie going, I think that was a Jim Carrey take, and I don't like it.
Oh, and see, I'm glad I didn't know about that because I think I would have been watching the movie in a different way.
Because specifically, the first time you hear him say, and if I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And then he does this backbend that is worthy of the gymnastics and the Olympics. And this huge, and it's goofy. And I'm like, what are you, Fire Marshal Bill again? I mean, I don't like that. Like, that was not Truman to me. That was not like a regular guy stuck in this dystopian kind of, there are some times where I think he just went back. And then when he was scared of the Dalmatian that lived next door, that was very naturalistic. Like, it was big, but it was like, this is what somebody who's scared of a dog would actually act like, and not like crazy, nutty Jim Carrey. So I just wish that Peter Weir had said, no, you're in my movie. This is the kind of performance I want. I know you can do it. Just do it.
The only thing I would say about that is the movie was kind of fantastical itself. So, I mean, the world that Truman was living in was not current. He was living in a 1950s version of reality. And so his performance almost made it seem like he thought sitcoms were real, and like, he was a character within his own life. So it was kind of hard to see the differences of like of the real. I mean, I don't know that he would have a hard time of understanding like TV and real world.
And yet he understood when his wife starts, pitching products as she's unwrapping the groceries, that's weird. You know? I mean, it just, and I think I hear what you're saying, Matt, and I get that, I mean, if you lived your whole life in this bubble, then things would be a little off for you. But I still kind of think it would have been better if he was the really understated normal one and everyone else was a little heightened because they were all the actors. And yet most of the people around him, Laura Linney excluded, which we'll get to her in just a minute, were way more understated than he was most of the time. I mean, so I don't know. There was something about his performance that I liked it 75% of the time. And I kind of wish I'd never read this interview because it just fucked up the other quarter of the movie for me. It's like, stop being Jim Carrey. You don't have to be Jim Carrey. You can be, lowercase Jim Carrey.
Well, it's interesting. I agree with you. I didn't read this article. I'm glad that I didn't. But I will say that the times that he was quote unquote Jim Carrey, like in Living Color is one of my favorite television series of all time. I can quote you all of those scenes.
He's great in that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to do a Homie the Clown impression, it's not very politically correct these days, but I could. And my father loves Homie the Clown. I digress. Anyway, but I did notice that when he was doing his shtick, it did take me out of the movie because I was in it and I was fully in it and I was enraptured. And then all of a sudden he would do like that sort of weird back bend, or he would be like, make some sort of like crazy face. And I would be like, oh, right, I'm watching Jim Carrey. Like I'm not watching Truman Burbank. And it totally did take me out of those.
And actually the whole Spaceman in the Mirror thing, I liked. I mean, I get that was improv, but he was being fairly like, he wasn't performing for anybody. He didn't think. He was just goofing off in his bathroom. Right. And, and so that was real. And that was one of those things like, oh, you don't know that millions of people are watching you do this, you poor son of a bitch.
I know, right?
Creepy.
Crazy creepy. Well, we're going to get into all of that. All right, next up, we mentioned her briefly. Fully 100% forgot she was in this movie. She's brilliant. I love her. Laura Linney. I think we could say that she's maybe a patron saint of the Rebound Project.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I think she's amazing. So this is where it gets a little complicated. She is Hannah Gill playing Meryl Burbank, Truman's wife. And I did remember the scene, and it made me laugh. I was like peeing my pants. I was laughing so hard when she has the Makoko after they're having like their big fight, and she's like, Makoko, and he's like, who are you talking to? I totally remember that, and it was just as funny enough. Like it just even thinking about it now, it's so funny.
The scene that I remembered from 25 years ago is when he stalks her at the hospital, and they're supposed to be having surgery on somebody who's fully awake. Amputation on somebody who's awake, going, please don't cut off my leg while I'm like, not even anesthetized. That's sad. I liked Laura Linney in this a lot, and I liked it because she was our only like little window. Okay, I'm going to say something completely nutty, and Allie is going to think I'm insane. But
I can't wait.
Let me just put it out there. I saw a movie recently, and it kind of reminded me of this one a little bit, and it was Tar. And the reason that Tar reminded me of this one is that Tar. Have you seen this? Have you seen Tar, Matt?
No.
Okay.
It's fucking amazing. It's one of the best movies I've seen all year.
Okay. When you watch Tar, everything is from her point of view. Everything is from her point of view, to the point where all the horrible shit that she's done, you don't even see it on screen because she wouldn't want to remember it. So she wouldn't really show it to you. And she blocks out all that shit. So the beginning of the Truman Show is kind of like that, right? Like you saw this light fall down from the heavens, but you don't cut immediately to the moon room where everyone's like, oh shit, a light fell down. What are we going to do? Make up a story about an airplane, put it on the radio. Like we could have seen all that, but we didn't. right? There's a lot of stuff kind of, that is happening in the background. Like you see the product placement, but you just kind of have to go, oh, this is something they're doing in the back. And it's not until like halfway through the movie that you actually see behind the scenes, so to speak. And I liked that about it. I mean, I got it. There are some times when I wish, but one thing I really wanted from this movie is I really wanted Laura Linney to show up in Ed Harris's office with a leopard coat and a bright red lip and say, I want out of my contract or I will sue you. Like I wanted to see her like in full actress mode, not even trying to be Meryl anymore, just to see what it's like to be an actor on this show.
So I did read, I don't know if that scene exists, but I did read that there was stuff left out on the cutting room floor, including like interviews with the actors, with Louis Coltrane, with Hannah Gill, and, sort of like their process and how they work day to day. And I do wish that it was a little bit more of a documentary in that sense where we could have seen those things, because you're right. I would have loved like some sort of either confrontation scene or those sort of like quote unquote documentary interviews about like their lives as actors, because you think about it, and we're going to get to it in a second, but like Noah Emmerich, he was acting since he was a kid. Like he was on the show for years and years and years and years, and
30 years.
Yeah. Well, so like, or 25 or whatever, and so I would have liked to seen a little bit more of that perspective of these actors. Hannah Gill's been on there since high school, so. Yeah.
And does she sleep with him every night? Have they
right,
had
that's
sex?
what I said. I was like, or do they like sleep in the same bed and then she goes to hair and makeup? Like, what's the machinations behind that? What's her schedule like? But yeah, I agree. But she was great, and I like that she was the one that sort of broke character. And because, she was kind of diva-esque, and, when she felt threatened by the Dyson peel, it's hilarious also. Some parts of this movie were really funny, and I didn't remember it being that funny.
I mean, at some points, she actually had the hardest character because she had to be his wife.
Right, she had to be in love with him and like have a baby with him. Okay.
Yeah. So, oh my God, so would they have gotten her pregnant?
Well, and, and they say later on, well, okay.
Be conceived on screen.
That was something I mean, Ed Harris at one point says, I still want to have the first on-screen conception. Ew. Like you're hiring an actress to basically be a sex worker, so that everyone can watch these people. I'm like, do we watch Truman poop? I mean, does he ever get like a moment where the whole world doesn't watch every single thing? Do we see him in the shower?
Probably. Tastefully, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully from the waist up, but still, sometimes, things happen in the shower. Do we see that? Like,
well, I'm assuming in high school. I mean, you probably.
He went to the bathroom 8 times a day. Did we go with him every single time?
You're right. Yikes! Yeah, we didn't.
Speaking of that, for a moment, I read that when I was kind of doing my quote unquote research, for this one too, that originally the script was going to be about a kid in high school who realizes,
and it was much darker. Apparently.
Yes, but that would have like cleared up a lot of these problems, because like by the time he becomes an adult, there are just some things that like you just have to wonder like how did this what really mostly about like women who sleep with him who are under this ruse. He's under this ruse that these women are actually in love with him and want to sleep with him, and that it's private. Right. I mean, all these ethical questions, like the idea that it's a vocal minority of people who have ethical problems with this show is like, oh, come on. I would have an ethical problem with this show in 2023 after reality TV has completely flooded the world just because he doesn't know. And he's the whole notion of consent is just thrown out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, and has no choice in life, really. I mean, that, and I guess we'll probably get into that later too, as like the whole function of it.
Correct. All right, moving on to the wonderful, super hot, even as a director jerk, Ed Harris is so good. And actually, this was one of those movies where I was like, he actually wasn't in it very much. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where I thought he had kind of a bigger part. And I thought that I remembered, and I totally misremember this, I thought that he and Christoph had like a big confrontation at the end of the movie, which they don't.
You mean he and Truman?
Yes. Who did I say?
You said he and Christoph.
Oh, that's a different movie. No, yes, I'm
It's
sorry.
Sliding Doors, The Truman Show.
Let's take that back a second. I thought I remembered a big confrontation between Truman and Christoph at the end, but really he just gives his kind of Oscar speech, and Jim Carrey makes his decision. I don't know why I remember.
I mean, it's as big of a confrontation as Christoph would give. I mean, he's this kind of like auteur with weird glasses and a beret.
All the rings. You know the character.
Oh yeah,
he's so good though. He's excellent.
He is, and he's hot as hell. I mean, as evil as
hot
he is, would just those big blue eyes just sink right into those.
Some of the most beautiful eyes ever captured on screen.
And it just authoritative. It's really he's hot in this movie.
But here's my other thing, and I know. Like, don't even yell at me about this. I know I'm overthinking. Like, I overthink everything. But the one thing that I couldn't get because the movie actually went there and they talked about, the world was with you when you took your first steps and the world was with you on your first day of school. And I'm thinking nobody would watch a movie 24 hours a day about the life of a toddler. That is the most boring, idiotic. You know how much toddlers sleep? I mean, like, nobody would watch that. Like, the idea that this has been a hit show for over 30 years is just like, no, it hasn't. It hasn't. I mean, and I know I just have to let that go in order to enjoy the movie. So fine, I'm letting it go, but I'm just putting it out there before I let it go. That was weird and that was odd.
I mean, fair, but as we will come to talk about, people will watch stupid shit for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
many,
true.
many, many times over. So.
But I mean, the Truman Show's been on longer than Saturday Night Live.
I think you're giving the American public maybe a little too much credit. And I'm in there too. I'm not immune to stupid reality television. All right, moving on to Noah Emmerich as Louis Coltrane, playing Marlin, Truman's best friend since early childhood, who you may know from like a million things. I know him from The Americans, a show which I should love, but I have watched season 1 probably 3 times trying to get into this movie. But anyway, he's very good in this. And, he's also, I find him attractive as well. And I like this character because clearly he loves Truman. He loves him as a friend. They've been best friends for a long time. And
does he love him, or is he just in character?
See, I think he struggles with telling the truth and wanting to tell him the truth. I don't know. He lets him go at one point, like towards the end. I don't know. I think he really, and then he plays it with, a lot of depth, I think. But
isn't it the first time I'm trying to remember this? I think the first time we kind of see the backstage machinations is when all of a sudden we hear Christoph giving him lines, and then he starts saying them on the pier, on the dock.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was with you. I liked Marlin. Okay, he's a good friend. And then when I saw him just saying everything Christoph told him to say, I'm like, I fucking hate you. I hate you so much. You are literally the worst.
I feel like in that scene he was conflicted, but he went along with it. I mean, at that moment he could have said, you know what, Truman, I really do care about you, and this is just all bullshit. But he didn't, and he went along with it. I mean, because his 27-year or 25-year career. I was going to say,
he's been an actor since he was a child. He doesn't know anything else. Like, just not to be
he wrestled with these ethical conversations a long time ago. Like, and he's made his peace with it. Or realized there's no one else wants to hire him.
Right, correct.
Or, but if you're also a character on a 24-hour TV show, like, do you have a life outside that TV
Probably
show?
Probably not.
Like, he's on that show at least 8 hours. I mean,
that's what Hannah says at the very beginning. It's a lifestyle, this show.
Yeah. So, I mean, his world is the Truman Show at that point, too. So he might not be able to let go of it because it's hard to think of a life without it now. Like, what do you do as a character?
And maybe it's kind of comforting in a way to have a voice in your head tell you what the right thing to say is all the time. You don't have to make any choices.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it fucked up Truman, obviously, but it fucked up all these actors who've been on there forever, too. So...
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving right along. Next up is Natasha McElhone as Sylvia, who is playing Lauren Garland, Truman's college schoolmate. I thought they were in high school. College, sorry. I know her as the first lady on Designated Survivor, which, by the way, is an underrated television series on Netflix that you should watch. It was on, I don't know, I think NBC or CBS. I don't know, one of the major networks. Now it's on Netflix. It's really fucking good. It's good. Kiefer Sutherland is the president. I mean, you can't get any better than that.
I totally forgot she was in this movie. I totally forgot her character, like 100%, but she was great. She's gorgeous, first of all. Not that that's the first thing you should say, but, you know, she is beautiful. It's undeniable. And she was, you know, it was great to
She was a truther.
Yeah, she is a truther. And I'm, you know, like, how can you not be on her side?
Yeah. And I mean, it was one of those things. Christoph can't account for human being and their chemistry because, you know, he wanted to pair him up with somebody else. And he, like, as human beings do, fell in love with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the fact, though, that when she was calling into that show and she was walking around her apartment, like, you know, berating Ed Harris, you saw the sign behind her that said, "Truman, you're on TV." It was the same sign that somebody skydove into this town in. And I was like, oh, like, she's part of a whole society. Like, that's so cool.
Like an underground society. I love it. Like, and again, I wish this movie was 10 hours long because, you know, it could have been a miniseries. Like, let's do an episode on the underground society, right? Or like, are these all like former actors who were on it? Was the dad in it for a while and then decided to go back? Like,
that's a really great concept. Like, I would watch a miniseries of this.
And how did the dad get back on set? Like, you'd figure this set has a lot of security,
right?
Well, especially since there's no homeless people in.
Oh my God, that whole scene was really, that whole scene was really funny too. When Helen Taylor, who we're going to talk about right now, she was like, "It's better to clean up the trash." And it's literally like one homeless house. It's very funny. Helen Taylor, always great. The inimitable Helen Taylor as Alanis Montclair, playing Truman's mother, Angela Burbank, who obviously was has been on the show for a million years too. I mean, she's always. I mean, I could watch Helen Taylor just like read this book. Honestly,
she's awesome.
She's got that like sort of regal air, and it's so funny when her and Laura Linney. This movie was very funny. When her and Laura Linney were like looking at the photos, and Jim Carrey's like sandwiched in the middle of them. It's like, you know, two loud broads. You know, sorry, Truman, that's what your lot in life is right now.
The interesting thing about both their characters, though, is neither of them is warm. Like,
no,
they purposely paired him with people that were not loving. Like, which was just so bizarre to me. Like, how do you expect him to love her and want to stay part of this show if she's as cold as a fish? It was just really, really bizarre to me. But
she knows how to pinch Mococo.
Yeah. Who are you talking to? And then you see him drink it later. Hilarious. Okay, and then we've got 3 audible mentions of people that I definitely didn't remember were in this movie. Starting with the always great Paul Giamatti as the control room director. No recollection of that. He's always good. Peter Krause, a very young Peter Krause as Lawrence Truman's boss.
Very tall hair.
Yes, 98. That was kind of the thing with the men's. I mean, look at NSYNC. They all had big hair. And then last but not least, the wonderful Harry Shearer, who is a talk show host, going through an interview with Christoph. It was funny because I love Harry Shearer, and obviously I know his voice because he's on The Simpsons and lots of other things. But I never remember. Like, I'm always like face blind to him, and then when I was looking at the cast list, I was like, oh right.
But the one thing about this, as I'm looking at this whole cast list, the names that they chose to name all these characters are a little on the nose. Right?
Yes, I mean Louis Coltrane. Come on,
Truman is a true man, and everyone else is fake, right? Christoph is kind of a god figure, so let's name him Christoph. Okay, fine. Yeah. And then everyone else who's on the show: Meryl Streep, Marlon Brando. You know, all of these names of all of these, like, you know,
Lauren Bacall
actors. Right? I mean, it just come on. I mean, it was a little like. I'm all for a little bit of symbolism there, but it's one of those things where halfway into this movie, I was like, wait a minute. And then it all kind of like clicked in. I'm like, the true man. Oh, God.
So is Angela Burbank supposed to be Angela Lansbury?
Maybe.
Perhaps. But I mean, they're all, Meryl was the big tip off. Apparently, Mary Louise Streep, Meryl is not even a name. Meryl Streep's dad called her that because her name is Mary Louise. And that's not even and so that's why nobody else is named Meryl. That's like a nickname. But here we have. You noticed, right, when she was introduced and her name was Meryl, and you thought, I've never heard of that name except for one other person in the world who's an actress.
I actually didn't. I didn't even think about it.
I didn't think about it either because I didn't know that. I thought Meryl was just like an old world name that nobody uses.
I know a Meryl. I know somebody else who is Meryl.
Well,
Meryl Streep.
Was she named after Meryl Streep?
Unclear. I don't. Oh, and one thing that I forgot to bring up when I was doing my deep dive. Apparently, Noah Emmerich's Marlon was like in and out of rehab.
Oh,
that's what it said, and
really?
Had a really bad drug problem.
That's awesome. I wish they'd have gotten into that because, like, what do you do?
Right?
Yeah.
What do you do when an actor's got to take some time off? What if an actor says, "Hey, I got this really great pilot, but I need to be gone for 3 weeks"? Did they get to take a vacation while Truman's stuck in this, dome?
Yeah, or they got pregnant or whatever.
Which is why the miniseries would be great because was the drug addiction brought on because of his conflict, like personal inner turmoil, because of having to play somebody's best friend, even though I think can't tell him the truth?
I think the character had a drug addiction.
That's not
the actor.
Oh, so he played a drug addiction.
Yes. But maybe it was modeled on his own. I don't know. It was a very weird.
Yeah, I mean, to give him some conflict, right? It's like we're introducing a new love interest. Okay.
Right.
Cocaine.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Sorry.
Cocaine.
So weird.
Sorry. I just feel like we could have a 9-hour show on this movie just because like every time it zigs, you want to zag. All right, look, let's get into it about reality television. I will say from the start that I am a reality television lover. I don't love all reality television. I have very specific genres that I watch. So this is not a judgment. This is no shame. And especially like back in now, reality television is like half of what people watch.
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper to make. That's why.
There are reality TV categories in the Emmys. I don't think this movie really had any idea how prevalent reality TV would be 25 years later. Because, if you think about this, this was 2 years before the first Survivor. Now, I remember the final Survivor going to a bar to watch the final Survivor because it was so popular. Mm-hmm. Like I remember this very clearly. I went to a bar and like every screen was on Survivor. Like, can you even imagine that now? Like, it's crazy. Every screen was on Survivor. There were drink specials and bar was packed.
Oh, please, Allie, go to a gay bar anytime Drag Race is having a finale. You'll see it again.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad. I love that sort of shit. That's why I like going to watch like the State of the Union bar. I love watching it with a bunch of people. But like, I don't think this movie could have predicted that.
No, well, that was also the era where we still had to record stuff on VHS if you were not going to be home to watch.
Also true. Yes, no DVR.
Because there was no streaming at that time. Right. Everybody was going to talk about it, and that
dark days of appointment television.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I do still love kind of appointment television, but I'm old school. I mean, I watch Lost in real time. Let's put it that way.
Oh wow.
Yes, exactly. Like had the summer breaks and everything where they had like ended on some sort of crazy cliffhanger. I mean, Survivor had amazing ratings. And then you sort of think about, and this is very similar to the Truman Show in a lot of ways, is the rise of Big Brother, where it is 24/7 feeds. And Eric, people do, maybe not for 24 hours a day, but I know people who will go unnamed, but I know people who, buy those extra feeds, will watch the extra feeds, will watch the 5 episodes a week of Big Brother. And literally all they're doing is just like hanging out in the house. They're like doing, and that's not a dig. Because, I'm going to talk about another reality show genre in a second that I do watch. But, it's not like they're doing anything crazy, just like the Truman Show. Like they're maybe doing competitions, but it's basically these people sitting around a house eating potato chips and people love it.
Yeah, I have to say, I am not a huge reality TV person. Part of it is that about a decade ago, I was in a relationship with someone who moved into my house who watched every reality TV show on television. I watched every Kardashian show that was on. I watched American Idol. We watched The Voice. So competitive, non-competitive, all of it was this cheesy reality TV. And when that man moved out of my house, the first thing that happened was I never watched a single one of those shows ever again in my life, except I will watch the Snatch Game episode of Drag Race when it's on, because I think that shit is fucking hysterical. But those are performers, like doing a comedy show.
Right.
It's not the same thing as doing, but but even Drag Race, like all the backstage interviews and the, everyone kind of, talking shit about everybody. I don't want to sound like a snob, because I don't cast any aspersions. Please, everyone, like what you like. But I don't have enough time in my day for that shit. I'd just so much rather watch something on Netflix with cliffhangers that just keeps me glued. If I was sitting there watching TV and people were just doing the Big Brother house, sitting around and, scrolling through their phone, I'd rather scroll through my phone than watch somebody else. I mean, that I don't get it. And again, I hope I don't sound like too much of a, but it is not for me. So like I had big feelings about Kristoff and what an asshole he is throughout this whole thing, but also mostly because unlike the Kardashians, Truman never signed up for this shit. And that was the big thing to me, that we still haven't crossed that line, even in 2023. Have we? We might have.
Well,
No, I don't.
I mean, I guess
No, because now contracts are like ironclad, so they're not.
And I guess when it comes to kids, you have to look at the Kardashians' children now and say, did they sign up for this? And some of them had said, I don't want to do it. And a lot of people think Kourtney Kardashian only has 2 children now because one of them doesn't want to be on the show. And the same thing with the Osbournes, right? I mean, Kelly and Jack had a sibling who did not want to be on the show, and everyone thought that Ozzy and Sharon had 2 children when in fact they had 3.
I mean, it is interesting because, I watch a lot of, I watch all of the Real Housewives franchise. I watch all of the 90 Days. I watch all of those. That's my main genre. Judge me if you like, but but if you don't and you watch Bravo, give me a call and we'll chat.
I used to. I mean, I was there for the big prostitution whore table flip episode.
I mean, that's fucking canon now. Right? Like prostitution whore, you were engaged 23 times. I don't do a great Teresa Giudice, but it is. But it's canon now. Everybody, a lot of people know what that means. And what I was going to say about it though is, there have been a lot of contentious divorces on that show, and sometimes the children can't be shown. Like if a woman is a housewife and she has an ex-husband, and the ex-husband says those children cannot be on camera, those children cannot be on camera. So it is interesting because you know that this woman is a mother, but you never see her children. So it's definitely,
And it's so heavily produced. Like I say I haven't seen reality TV in a long time, but I was at a friend's house over the weekend for New Year's, and what was on but CBS in the middle of the day, Lucky Dog, right? This show about these people who pair new dogs with families who are looking for a dog. I mean, it's very wholesome for reality TV. But, they show up to surprise the family with their new dog, and they knock on the door, but there's a camera in the family's living room, and they all go, who could that be? And you're like, oh, please. Like, there's a camera in your living room. You are not being surprised right now. I mean, even in what we call reality TV, they're so heavily staged. And I think what we had just said, it's so prevalent now because it's so cheap. But the whole time I was watching the Truman Show, I was like, how expensive is this show? You had to build a whole fucking town. You had to put 50,000 hidden cameras everywhere. How big was that ocean that he trying to escape.
It was 2/3 of that giant Coliseum.
So it's like you can see the studio from space, according to this movie. This is an expensive show to make. So it's not, that's the other thing that didn't really, I think one of the reasons why we have so much reality TV today is that it is cheap. It's so much cheaper than scripted stuff. But that seemed to be the opposite of what was in this movie.
Just encouraging people to be bad. That's really what most. I mean, the first season of Survivor, I loved that first season of Survivor, but it was unique in that we hadn't done anything like
that.
I
mean, it was totally it blew my mind because there's nothing like we'd ever seen before. And
Richard Hatch knew what it was before anybody else did and played that game better than anybody else.
Like a fucking fiddle. Like anybody, honestly, like one of the best in the history of reality television.
But I think everything after that, once producers understood what this really was, that's when it all went downhill, because then they set up scenarios, even in non-competitive or long format. I mean, these are just long format game shows is really all this is. even in just normal television, they encourage and show us the bad behavior of people. Like that's why I stopped watching. That's why I stopped watching Survivor. It's why I stopped watching Project Runway before it went off the air. It's because it got to be more about the drama than them actually making cool clothes and having to go through challenges.
Yeah, I really like the artistic aspect of Project Runway, but when they all became really catty and bitchy and were doing their best to like fuck with the other contestants and make them screw up, I was like, I don't like this anymore. I just want to see I just want to see the runway show.
You have to have a villain now. So like now my jam, if I ever watch quote unquote reality television, is like Trisha Yearwood's cooking show on Food Network.
I do like her cooking show. And of course, Pioneer Woman, now that I'm in Oklahoma, she only lives 45 minutes away from me. It's very exciting. She gets her hair cut right down the street in Tulsa.
I sometimes will go to my friends Tom and Justin's house and they will have on the Great British Baking Show, which is a much more, gentle version, although still some of the same stuff. I mean,
yeah. Well, but much better than Top Chef, which Top Chef, they're like the judges themselves. Well, one of the judges themselves is kind of an asshole. And then they encourage the people to. If you watch the child version of that, completely different. All the kids love each other. They are being supportive of each other. Much better show to watch. And even the judges are nicer, and it's a more fun show to watch. I don't understand why everybody wants all this drama in their lives that we get from these shows. I mean, I don't know if it makes people feel better that drama doesn't exist in their show and they can talk about it with other people.
I think that's a lot of it. I mean, that's why I like watching really intense dramas on TV because I can turn it off. Yeah. Like when it's over, I can say, okay, that wasn't my life anymore.
And not judging here. I mean, I understand that people enjoy it. And for me, it just is not like, I do like The Voice, and Songland was really good because those are all about, it was actually kind of uplifting in actual competition. So I don't know. The drama.
My only thing about The Voice is I wish they would have figured out how to keep the contestants hidden from the judges the whole show. Because I love watching the auditions, and then after they turn around, I lose interest in that show.
Yes, I would agree with. I agree with you on that. I mean, for me, it's what I use reality television as. At least the reality television shows that I watch is like, some people watch Friends as like their sort of like background comfort show. I just put on, I'll put on Real Housewives of whatever city I'm watching at that moment, and like, I don't know, I'm on my phone, I'm making dinner. Sometimes like after a long, busy day, I can't watch a prestige television show. Like, I just don't have the brain power to like focus up, and so it's just this comfort show.
You know what? And while you're doing that, I'm scrolling through Facebook and Twitter, so I am in no place to judge.
Well, and I'm doing that while watching the reality television show, so my brain's a real fucking mess. Is basically what I'm saying. It's mush right now.
I turn on American Dad and Family Guy.
Exactly. So we all have our things. We all have our things. One last thing about reality television that I did think was interesting 25 years later is that I think on the Truman Show that people, when you see like the Truman Show bar or people having merch or people, like whatever, I think it was made to be like over the top, but now it's not over the top at all. Like every housewife, has their tagline on a television shirt. BravoTV.com sells a shit ton of, taglines and all sorts of different merch. So like having that is no longer over the top. Like now you can, for any reality television show, I mean, same with Drag Race, like, you can get merch with whatever tagline you have on there. So it's not over the top. I thought that was just kind of an interesting distinction.
So actually, if we took this back to the Truman Show being like a mini series, you'd probably have those actors with like their own like lines of clothing and brands of stuff off the show that they were doing themselves. Because like, as much as I don't watch the Kardashians, I have to give Khloe Kardashian some credit for actually like creating a business outside, like a makeup business and a clothing line and stuff like that she's turned into $1 billion business.
Apparently Good American jeans are amazing. That's her clothing line. So, and Skims and have made, are also, I have friends who wear Skims and they're supposed to be amazing. So
I have to say for the 2 years that I watched all the Kardashians, Khloe was my favorite. She actually had a personality. She's funny. I like her because she's funny. And I cannot believe I have opinions about Kardashians.
Immortalized for all time now. Okay, moving along. Some of the reading that I did says that this could be sort of a fictionalized version of Utopia. The book Utopia was an island with one entrance and one exit, which obviously we've come to find out that's what sort of Truman lives. But it's not really a utopia if you can't really leave. And you kind of touched on this earlier, Eric, about like Truman wasn't a willing participant in this. Like he thought that this was his life. So it's not a utopia. Like it's pictured as such, but like if you are trapped somewhere, that's not a utopian society.
I mean, listen, I have a friend who probably would look at that street with all the white picket fences and the uniform houses and think it looks like paradise. But you're right. I mean, you have to give people a choice. And, the thing about most of this show is that it becomes pretty clear to us, at least, and I would imagine to the viewing audience at home, quote unquote, in the movie, that Truman wants out. And what was interesting to me is that when he gets out, everyone in the bar is screaming and crying tears of joy. Best finale ever. Like they were really on his side while they were principally responsible for victimizing him this whole time. And then my favorite thing about this whole movie, honestly, and I'm going to spoil the very last 2 seconds of the movie, folks, so get ready, is the very end, those two guys in the parking garage who were like, hey, what else is on TV?
Yes, exactly. We're going to move right on. Yeah.
Once it's over, they don't care. That was a good TV show to them, and that was all it was. So that to me was that commentary on us, I thought was really fascinating. And I mean, did it strike anyone else as weird that everyone else was so happy for Truman that he was getting out? And it's like, but you wanted to keep him there forever until you saw that he really wanted out. And then, I guess things changed for you. But it was just an interesting, when I saw everyone, those two old lesbians on the couch with their Truman pillow, hugging each other and like, just weeping tears of joy for his escape. And I'm like, that's so weird.
Well, I think it comes down to him actually wanting to get out of there was actual real drama and controversy, which every TV show needs. Like, even reading books and stuff, you're as I read through, when dark stuff starts to happen, you're like, oh man, I wish that didn't happen to that character. But that's what makes the story interesting. And so him actually wanting to get out, fighting to get out now, probably made that show much better. I bet their ratings jump. Well, actually, they said, when they went off the air, people were so like, okay, what's actually going on? Why can't I tell? There's got to be a lot of stuff going on. Their ratings spiked. So I can imagine that people were actually cheering because something actually happened finally, as they've been waiting for 30 years for like real.
We've been watching him sell insurance for the past decade. That cannot be exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's so interesting because it just sort of shows like the people are so mercurial. Like they're just going to kind of go with the wind and like, all right, he wanted to escape and now we're going to be happy for him. But like, really, we were the ones perpetuating the whole thing. So yeah.
And for the rest of their lives, they'll be like, where were you when Truman got out? Oh, I was at a bar and we were all watching it on 6 screens and it was this amazing moment. I mean, that's okay.
In a dark sense, this kind of goes back to Princess Diana's death.
I can tell you exactly where I was for Princess Diana's death. Well,
no, I mean the fact that the world is what caused Princess Diana to die, because we buy the stupid papers that purchase the photos that those guys were trying to get of her. I mean, because they wouldn't leave her alone. So we caused it as a world. We killed Princess Diana.
Right.
I mean, that's really what that is.
And then,
we fucked up Truman.
And then reading Spare, he was talking about for 2 years, they were like, oh, we'll be better. And then 2 years later, they were doing the same exact shit and stalking her kids, night and day. I mean, that's those folks are fucking evil. And I know we shouldn't spend too much time feeling too sorry for literally the most privileged people on the planet, but that it's that lack of consent, right? It's that I did not sign up for this shit, but this is my lot in life because somebody else decided that I was worth money. I realize that people are still hungry and we have diseases to cure, but I mean, it is like it's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. One final thing before we move on to some more fun stuff. I thought this was an interesting sort of take, this movie on the quote unquote American dream. As you mentioned, Eric, this was shot in Seaside, Florida, which is a planned community. I don't know if you have ever been to Disney's Celebration right outside of Orlando. It is very similar. It is a planned community. It is all white houses. It is picket fences. It is fucking creepy AF. They actually, I go to Orlando every other year for work, and I always drive to Tampa to visit a friend afterwards because it's only like an hour and a half drive, and you drive right past Celebration. So one time on this journey, I was like, I'm getting off at Celebration because I've like seen pictures. I'm obsessed with it because it's so fucking weird and creepy. And it like driving around, it's exactly like it looks in the Truman Show. And Disney owns it. So like it is Disneyfied, is like planned community for Disney lovers. It's real weird. Just look up Celebration. Just look up Celebration and you'll see what I mean. Celebration, Florida. Anyway, like the houses of little white picket fences, which is what Kristoff thinks everybody wants. This is, and a lot of Americans, I think, still think of that as like the American dream. And, Kristoff says that he did this to protect Truman because the outside world is bad. But like, that's
bullshit.
sort of homogeneous thinking.
Kristoff
Right. And that's sort of homogeneous
money.
thinking. Right. And like, it never works out anyway, even if he did have the best of intentions, which we know that he did not. Even if he did, like that sort of thinking never works out, like bad versus good versus like protecting somebody versus free fucking will. You know what I mean? Like,
and of course, I was watching this going, what happens if like the baby they picked out of obscurity turns out to be gay or trans?
Or a fucking serial killer and just
or that.
I mean, what if he's Dexter? I mean, it would have made a more interesting show, but like seriously.
It's true. It's true. And I think about that a lot, actually, what you just said. Like, I think about, like, what if, not to go back to the royals, but I do think about this, but, like, what if, like, their wives couldn't get pregnant or, like, I don't know, got fat, God forbid. It just, so it's, like, sort of the same thing. Like, when people are in the public eye, I always wonder about those sorts of things. And last but certainly not least, everything was for sale. That is certainly the American dream personified, is, like, making a buck. We're going to make a book.
So I have to admit, like this time around, I picked up on the product placement a lot quicker, even to the point with Ron and Don. I never realized when I watched it the first time that what they were trying to do was back him up to a billboard so that they could get the shot. And it was so obvious this time around watching the movie.
Because we're so used to it, because there's product placement on literally every movie. Like sometimes it's crazy to me that like Pepsi will sponsor something and then you'll literally see Pepsi in every single like part of the movie. Like every time they're drinking something. It's like, okay, come on,
Watched a really awful Ryan Reynolds action movie over the weekend. And of course he sidles up to the bar and there's this huge bottle of aviation gin right next to him.
Oh, is that wait, did you watch the one? It was with him, The Rock, and Gal Gadot?
No, it was called Six Underground. He was like the only star. But yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, no thanks. All right, friends, are we ready for some fun facts?
Yes, please.
Always.
Okay. I kind of dig some kind of pretty deep for some fun facts. I was surprised. I thought this would be a fun fact movie, but apparently it was not a lot of fun facts. But the first one is Ed Harris and Jim Carrey never met during filming.
They didn't have to.
What?
Why should they?
I mean, yeah. And actually, it's probably better for the movie, for their characters. But yeah, they never met.
So,
because Kristoff was never on set, he was always in that room.
So they did it. I didn't really think about it. So they filmed it like animation, where a lot of people that do voices for animation never talk to each other. And so maybe like as they're filming that scene, Ed Harris, I mean, the two scenes aren't connected.
I mean, I'd have filmed it at the same time, but still, you wouldn't have to meet. They were on completely different sets.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes that scene even better in a way. I mean, because the thing I loved about that scene, it's almost like Truman shouting back at God, because Kristoff, is God that has created this world in a sense, and Truman's like, I've outgrown this and needs to leave. And I thought that's one of the reasons I really did love that scene, because God thought that he knew that exactly what he was going to do and what he needed. So sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was. I did think it was also interesting. Next, Dennis Hopper was originally cast as Kristoff. Okay, but it worked out on the first day of shooting. Apparently, was not a good fit for everyone involved. I cannot imagine Dennis Hopper in that role.
I mean, Kristoff would have been even more immediately hateful.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Ed Harris, the hotness actually worked in its favor, because you hated him, but you were like, oh, but you're just delicious. So.
But there was also like a fatherly, I know what's best aspect to him that I don't know Dennis Hopper could have brought, that I think Ed Harris does. And I don't know if it's just like this. you automatically have respect when you look at Harris for some reason. I don't know why. You know what I mean? Like you kind of, like you said, he's just kind of in charge.
I mean, look, Ed Harris is laughing all the way to his bank, Clinton his Oscars. So yeah. Next, the twins, Ron and Don, who we just spoke about, they are not even actors. They were police officers who worked on the set, and they had such a great rapport with the actors that Peter Weir gave them a small part.
Oh, that's
awesome.
cool.
Was that cute? I thought that was so cute. And then this gets back to this last fun fact. It's not really fun, but I thought it was interesting. Gets back to what we were talking about earlier. Jim Carrey has since acknowledged this film as an accurate metaphor for the fatigue he was feeling from his own stardom, which is one reason he lost himself in more than method acting on the set of his next star vehicle, Man on the Moon, which is about Andy Kaufman, who also had his own demons, which could be seen as the conceptual inversion of this film, as it is about a performance artist whose whimsical behavior has everyone else questioning what is and isn't real. Deep.
Yeah.
Deep.
Way to bring down the room, Allie.
I'm sorry. I told you it wasn't very fun. I did say it was very fun, but it is kind of interesting because I do remember that Jim Carrey almost kind of had like a little breakdown after Man on the Moon. And, you know, I'm sure playing Andy Kaufman is not easy for anybody because he was such a quixotic character in person and in real life. But yeah, so. All right. Are you guys ready for a game?
Sure.
This game is called A New Reality. So we are set in present day. What celebrity, and assuming that the celebrity is going to agree to this, would you want 24/7 access to? What is the concept of the reality show that you would create around them? And is it a competition like of The Voice or, you know, or Project Runway, or is it just watching their housewives like the Kardashians or the Housewives? Matt, I'm going to start with you.
I have to say, I had a really hard time.
I'm sorry. I feel like I make the games really difficult.
No, it's just because the concept of reality TV, I honestly can't think of a celebrity that I would want to watch 24/7. I mean, just because, well, the reason is the more you know about somebody, the less you're going to really like them. I mean, that really just ends up being, and then with the concept
never meet your heroes, right?
Never meet your heroes. And even when you turn a show about somebody, like take Kathy Griffin, you know, her show started off, the first season was just about her mediocre D-list life. But then every season after that, she kind of had to manufacture a lot more D-list stuff and make up shit. And it became like everything else, like you're manufacturing your own life now in a sense. And not because you want to make your life better. You're coming up with stupid shit to do that to embarrass yourself to make your show more gain ratings. And so I have a hard time with that. But so I decided to pick the person that I kind of feel like we couldn't dig up any dirt on, and that's Dolly Parton. Okay. So if I'm going to watch a reality show about anybody, I want to know more about Dolly Parton. I want her to educate us on what being a good person is. And that's what this 24-hour show is about.
I want to meet her husband, who she hides from the cameras. I'm dying to see what he's like.
I don't want to see Dolly take the wig off. I don't.
No.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine with that. I mean, she can. Maybe it's not 24/7 access. Maybe it's just
maybe it's
8-5, 8-5, 9 to 5. Maybe it's just 9 to 5. It's just 9 to 5.
I do want to see all of her tattoos, though.
Yes, she has like 24 tattoos, right?
I mean, maybe she can one or two every season. She lets us see a new one. If I'm going to do that, that's the show I want to see. I want to see the show about somebody who I'm really hoping truly is just a good person. But, you know, at the same time, when she has her breakdown, let's humanize the breakdown and understand why she had the breakdown instead of trying to demonize her like we do with every other show and make a villain. I can't watch those shows anymore.
If that show were on, I hear what you're saying, Matt. I would not watch it because I wouldn't want to be disappointed in Dolly ever. So I'd be afraid to watch it. Like, I don't want to see her have a bad day.
Yeah.
I don't want to see Dolly Parton have a bad day. Dolly Parton is just sunshine and light, and I want to keep her in that little box.
Yeah. And so, okay. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it might be a double-edged sword there. So
It's hard. Okay. Eric, whom do you choose?
Okay. So mine isn't a celebrity really. So maybe I'm veering away from the rules, but you remember a couple months ago when somebody who I don't think we ever found out who it was, in Maine won the $1 billion Mega Millions lottery,
Oh,
I
okay.
would,
Small town.
yeah. Well, in a gas station, which makes me think that they probably didn't live in that town. They probably were just stopping through because, I mean, you know, some people pump gas at their own local, you know, who knows? We don't know who it was. But what I'm going to pitch here is that the next Mega Million that's over $1 billion comes with, if you play this game, not only do you get to win the $1 billion, but then you get a camera crew following you around for 24/7 for a year afterwards. Because I am honestly curious. I mean, obviously, would I turn down $1 billion? No, I would not. But would I ever have my life back? I don't think I ever would. I mean, it's just the amount of change that you would have to go through is so extreme. And I guess I kind of am interested in that story. I want to know what happens to somebody who makes $30,000 a year, who suddenly is a billionaire, and the family that comes crawling out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden these big issues, you know, you have to hire an assistant and you've never hired anybody, and you're like, what is that all about? And can you trust this person? And can you trust anybody? All that stuff I think would actually be kind of fascinating, and it would be somebody that I didn't know ahead of time and couldn't be disappointed by.
That's an interesting concept.
My father always says about lottery, people who win the lottery, he's like, that's enough money to ruin your life.
Yeah. You know, and maybe, do
So
I want to watch that? Maybe I do.
You know, and I always think about it, like what I would do if I won, and like all the people that would probably come out of the woodwork, or all the people that would be like, oh, I have this juicy story on Allie. Like, you know, now she's this billionaire, and guess what? She like, you know, kicked my puppy one time. I would never do that. I'm totally exaggerating. But you know what I mean? Like some sort of like, right. Or like some sort of crazy story, like, oh, I was friends with Allie and now I'm not friends with her anymore. And like, you know, just I can only imagine what that would be like.
I totally remember when you kicked my dog. I totally remember.
Stop! I don't want to perpetuate that. I love puppies, cats. So I kind of went like a different direction than both of you. My celebrity that I picked is somebody that I am interested in following, maybe not 24/7, but I am fascinated by her, and that is Tilda Swinton. And I kind of want to know, like, what is a regular day in Tilda Swinton's life? Like, is she in her like cottage drinking tea, like on the Irish moors? Like, I just want to know, like, how does
she have two husbands, or a husband and a wife?
Yes.
Like
maybe
that.
not a husband and a wife, but there's some sort of untraditional, non-traditional thing. And like, now her daughter is acting too. Like, what does that look like? And like, what are the interactions with her? And like, how does she like pick these crazy outfits? And like, what's her aesthetic? And like, I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated by her. And she keeps things close to the vest, which is probably why I want 24/7 access to her. And I don't need a competition. I just want to know, like, what is a day-to-day, what does Tilda Swinton's day-to-day life look like? And like, what is it like when she's on set? Like, is she like cool with the people on set? Like, is she cool with the people on set, or is she like, you know, standoffish to them? Like, does she go out with them for a drink afterwards? I'm fascinated by all that stuff. So that is my Tilda's reality is the show that I would want to make.
She was great in 3,000 Years of Longing. If you guys haven't seen that movie, I actually really enjoyed it. It was a good movie.
She's great in everything.
She's great in everything.
She is.
Snowpiercer is like still one of my top favorite movies, and she's so fucking good in that movie. Which, if you haven't seen Snowpiercer, you need to see it.
No.
It's unbelievable. So yeah, so there we go. All of our new reality shows. I would watch all of them.
I would probably watch none of them. I love you both, but I probably wouldn't want to see any of those.
Yeah, I want to see all of those. All right, we are now to our favorite segment, Skip, Rent, or Buy. If you are just tuning in for the first time ever, welcome. Skip means I wish I had never seen it. I could watch a reality show instead of this stupid movie. Rent means I am glad that I saw it. Don't need to see it again. It was a nice diversion for an evening. And buy means, you know, you don't necessarily need to buy it, but you will watch it again. Probably ad nauseum, at least several times. So reverse order, Eric, are you skip, rent, or buy for Truman Show?
I'm a big old solid happy rent on this one. It does. I mean, it's such an interesting concept, and it does make you think a whole lot about some ethical issues that are still very, very up in terms of what kinds of entertainment we decide to watch these days, and whether we are taking advantage or whether it's okay to, you know, all that stuff is great. To me, it does stretch my disbelief enough. Like, I just don't believe this movie was a hit for the first 12 years of its existence, because who wants to follow a kid around? I mean, just in their data, I mean, how interesting could that possibly be? No, you would never have been able to afford those 50,000 hidden cameras and everybody's buttons. So, the combination of the two, I'm really glad that I saw it, though. Really great performances, really interesting. Again, the ideas behind it, fascinating. But I saw it 25 years ago, and I liked it more this time around, actually. But I don't think I'm going to be reaching for it on my dial again. Really happy that I saw it. Don't need to see it again.
Okay. Matt?
Solid Rent. I really do enjoy this movie. I would sit down and watch it again. I'm not going to buy it. I would, if friends wanted to watch it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd be totally up to watch it. I agree with Eric on some of the points of the movie now. It's weird watching it in this new lens of like, that really couldn't happen. But I think you just kind of have to put some of that aside and just like kind of take it for what it is. I enjoyed it just as much this time. I actually really enjoyed it in the theaters the first time I saw it. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that Jim Carrey could actually really act. So it was nice to see that other half of him, kind of like watching Will Ferrell in Stranger Than Fiction, like, and really getting to see him actually act. So I kind of equate this movie to that. It's similar in that sense. So I definitely think people should rent this and see this movie.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of sort of oscillated between rent and buy, or not rent and buy. I do remember loving it in the movie theater, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. And I do remember that, like, the big story was Jim Carrey can act. People are very surprising. And P.S. comedy is harder than drama. Just saying, as an actor. But I think I am also a solid rent. I loved it. I loved it watching it again. I would absolutely, like, if it was on TBS and I'm flipping through the channels, like on a rainy whatever day, rainy afternoon, absolutely. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching it in a 2023 lens, where reality television does sort of dominate a lot more than it did 25 years ago, much more than it did 25 years ago. And so I really liked watching it through that lens. So 3 rents for our first movie. All right. Well, we will be back here next week with the Jennifer Lopez, George Clooney, hot and sexy vehicle Out of Sight, a movie I have never seen, and I am intrigued and excited to watch it. In the meantime, this is the Rewind Project. I'm Allie.
I'm Eric.
I'm Matt.
Be kind. Rewind.
You've been listening to The Rewind Project. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Google Play. Please subscribe and rate us. It helps a lot. We love your comments and questions. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and via our new phone number at 202-618-2402. Thanks for listening. Be kind. Rewind.
We've all stumped ourselves.
We'll
right?